Margaret Thatcher died today at the age of 87 after suffering a stroke. The former British Prime Minister was often heard saying, "I am not a consensus politician, I am a conviction politician." She proved that to be the case on many fronts, forging change in the world based on her own strong beliefs. And though they didn't always see eye to eye, she and her fellow conservative world leaders found ways to connect and create the world they wanted. The CBC's Keith Bogue has that for us tonight. Keith.
For conservatives on both sides of the Atlantic, Peter, the 1980s was a heady time. And nowhere more so than here, in Ronald Reagan's Washington. Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher were different in many ways, but politically, they were twins who claimed freedom as the lodestar of their conservatism. That is why this bronze statue of the Iron Lady perches over the boardroom of one of the most influential conservative think tanks in America, the Heritage Foundation.
So they really, I think, agreed on so many things and in so many ways.
Conservative historian Lee Edwards says Reagan and Thatcher knew from their first meeting, years before they were president and prime minister, that they came from the same ideological place.
Free markets, free men, and a free society.
Both had their ideological resolve tested in confrontations with organized labor. Reagan, in the early months of his presidency, ordered 11,000 striking air traffic controllers back to work. They refused. He fired them. Fired all of them. Thatcher refused to back down in the face of one of the most bitter and deadly coal miners' strikes, and the trade unions movement in Britain never recovered. Conservatives claim those tough tactics were watched closely in the Soviet Union by Mikhail Gorbachev at what would turn out to be the beginning of the end of the Cold War.
Margaret Thatcher herself, talking about Ronald Reagan, said he won the Cold War without firing a shot. And certainly Ronald Reagan himself gave credit to Margaret Thatcher for backing him at key times during that period of the 1980s.
It was she, even before the change of course in the Soviet Union, who pointed out that Mr. Gorbachev was a man that we can do business with.
In Canada, conservatives were in power too, and Margaret Thatcher was not shy about wading into the controversy about free trade with the United States and telling Canadians they had nothing to fear.
You need have no fear that Canada's national personality will be in any way diminished.
Reagan and Thatcher shared more than an ideological courage of conviction. They both showed personal courage, surviving something few Western politicians ever experienced. Thatcher at the Brighton bombing, Reagan wounded by a gunman in Washington. Neither was a hero for everyone, but for many conservatives, they set a standard for ideological steadfastness that will never be surpassed. Peter.
All right, Keith, thank you.